Hello and welcome back to another video with Gingerbexxi. Growing up, I had a lot of stuff to be bullied for in high school. I was ginger, which is looked very down upon in Scotland, as a kid anyway. I was also quite chunky, I was a goth, I had braces and glasses, and Dungeons and Dragons was seen as one of the most geekiest hobby to be part of. So I decided that for my own benefit, I was not going to get into D&D. So I never looked at it for a very long time. Later on in life, I heard about a bunch of friends that were playing it and a bunch of people that loved playing it and it was so fun. My little brother played it as well and he said it was amazing. So for me, I got really curious, but I didn't know how to get into D&D because I didn't know, at the time, I didn't know of anyone who was DMing. I didn't know anyone that was close enough to me to reach out to them to try and ask them if I can play with them. And then one day I was on Twitter and I noticed Matthew Mercer posted something about D&D and I thought, oh. So I went on and I had a look at Critical Role and man, I was obsessed instantly. I had no idea what the heck was going on, but just watching them all play was just amazing. And I very quickly got into it. And whilst I was watching, I learned a lot about the rules of D&D, a lot about the kind of things that you need to know for myself when I get into something. For me, going into something unknown is extremely nerve-wracking. So I like to know about something before I get into it fully. And that was one of the things that was kind of holding me back from wanting to play D&D, was that I did not know how to play. So whilst watching Critical Role, I learned a lot, and I mean a lot, about how the game mechanics work, general etiquette of the game, the role-playing aspect of it, the storytelling, but mostly it was the game mechanics that I was really interested to know about. And before I even sat down to play D&D with everyone, I went and bought the books. That month I had a little bit of spare cash and there was a 3-part set of the books that was the player's handbook, the DM handbook and the monster manual with a DM screen, and it was in a bundle and it was normally like 90 quid but it was down to like 50. So I was like, I've got a bit of spare cash this month, so I went and bought the books, and honest to God, I got super interested in not just the playing portion of it, but the world building of it, and the DM aspect of it really intrigued me as well. But I hadn't played yet, so I put some feelers out to some friends that I knew were interested in the fantasy side of stuff, one being my sister, who is my best friend as well, and I asked her, would you maybe be interested in something like this? And she was really keen. My cousin was quite interested as well and he had experienced DMing, so we decided to get together and have a few games. We ended up also having another one of our friends who ended up not staying on for a while. We had my other cousin that came for a few sessions, and we had a very close friend of mine as well who joined a little bit later on in this campaign, but he stuck around for a long time. So it ended up being really the 4 of us, me, my sister, and my cousin, and a very good friend of mine. And we played the Dragon of Icespire Peak, and it was honestly such a fun experience. I played a character, her name was Lorelei, and she was a cleric, and she was very much... What I've found is everyone that I played with and everyone I've played with since, their first characters are always very much them or the opposite of them. There's no in between for first characters, I feel. Well, from my experience anyway. So Lorelei was basically me. Lorelei was very friendly, very trying to help out. She was a healer, she was trying to do badass things, but the roles weren't very good for her, which is kind of real for life. It was a very good dive into it, and although my cousin had experience in DMing, so he knew kind of how to work it, I was very good with the mechanics of the game as well, so anything that people didn't know I actually already knew as well from watching hours of Critical Role. And it was coming to an end and I thought, I don't want to stop, but I knew that my cousin wasn't completely keen on DMing more. I love seeing world building in games and books and movies and shows. I just love seeing the worlds that people can come up with. So I sat down one day and decided that I was going to DM and I was going to build my own world, and I did. I wanted to create a whole world. I wanted to concentrate on how the different countries worked and how the world combined together and the story aspect of it, and I really went into planning. Whilst we were finishing up on Dragon of Icespire Peak, I went ahead and started writing the stories that I wanted to tell to the players. So I did first start with the world, because that is the hardest thing to do, and I had never had any experience with creating a world, creating like countries, creating maps or anything like that, but I am quite artistic. If you've been on the channel for a while, you know that I do a lot of character drawings. However, I also have drawn maps, only for my own world. What I did is I took an A3 sheet of paper, I got a handful of dice, and I threw the dice on the paper, and then where the dice landed, I drew around it. That was going to be the country. And then wherever the dice landed inside it, that was some kind of landmark or town or something that was in there. I did this 6 times, and I created 6 different countries. And all these countries had different ways of life, they had different climates, they had different rules, like the different people who like govern the countries and things as well. And there was also the different seas. And I also used my works printer and copier to help me out with this one. But what I did is I drew the maps by hand, and then I would copy them onto smaller paper, and I copied them all to be able to fit onto an A3 sheet of paper. So it was all laid out on this A3 sheet of paper, which I then copied again to make it into one document. It took longer than it should have, because what I should have just done is I should have just done the thing on the paper and then just drawn it on an A3 sheet of paper rather than I wasted so much paper doing this. Not the best way to do it, but it worked. And I ended up with a paper hand-coloured map that looked terrible, but it was fantastic for a visual on how we were going to play this game. Because at this time, again, we hadn't even started. No one had rolled for their characters or anything. This was just me in the planning phase, because I wanted to start with the world and then work the story into the world that I created. So once I had that map, which by the way, I did later go on to draw digitally, and it looks fabulous. This is it here. I'm very proud of my map. It's one of the things that I am actually most proud of doing, is drawing this whole map and creating this whole world. Out of all of the stuff that I've done, all of the drawings, all of the videos and everything, my world is something that I am so goddamn proud of, and I will always be proud of this world. So once I had the visual of the world, I went into each of the individual countries and tried to figure out, how does this country work? And each individual one, I went in, I named all of the towns, I named all of the landmarks, and I figured out kind of how I wanted those specific countries to work. I started with the country that was going to be where the party started, and that country was called Eforis. They were going to start in a very large city called Nearport. I then had to figure out how to incorporate the players, why they were there, why they were together, into this country. I really wanted this country to be run by the temples rather than a government, rather than some crazy barons or anything like that. I was wanting this to be run by the temples, but with a little bit of a difference between the temples that you and I would know about. So I made my own hierarchy of having the high priests of each of the larger cities be gathered in a council that would rule over the whole of Eforis. In Vagion, there were 3 temples which each had high priests, but there was the elder high priest, who obviously ruled over everyone. And this person was very, very, very highly regarded. Within each of the temples as well, the high priests all had their own advisors, and there were also the champions. Now the champions were chosen by the towns. Each town had their own champion, and these champions, they would do all these different jobs for the temples, for the people. They would also do private things as well. If you wanted to private hire these people, you could do that. But they were specifically chosen by the people to help them deal with issues such as monster problems, such as like gathering information, all that sort of stuff. And if it called for it, they also did some assassination quests. So these champions are the adventurers, and my party story starts with the 3 of them have just become champions, and they are gathering in Nearport to have the ceremony of them becoming the champions. Now in this year there was only the 3 of them that were chosen, and they have to meet with the high priest at Nearport and the elder high priest as well from Vagion. So the characters we had was Kaelin. Kaelin is a half-elf sorceress, and she was played by my sister. Now Kaelin was from the city of Fushila, and she worked alongside her mum and her dad. They owned a pub, and she had spent many years doing not a lot. She wanted to do a lot more, but she wanted to help her parents. However, one day the town was actually attacked, and she very, very bravely fought off the monsters that were attacking the town, and in doing so she became that town's hero and was volunteered by the people to become a champion, which she accepted. Our next character was Chip. Chip was a druid, and he was cheeky, to say the least. He was played by my cousin, who was very challenging to play with, actually, because he liked to test the limits of everything. However, Chip was fabulous. Chip grew up in the treetop city, really, of Bemere Lake, which was beside the lake, and it was named after such. Bemere Lake had this ginormous tree right in the centre of the city that everything revolved around, and inside the tree it was all hollowed out, and this is where the temple was built. Chip was a very, very talented gnome druid he was very in tune with animals. He was very good with the elemental side of things as well, and he trained very, very hard, and eventually he became one of the protectors of the town, and in doing so he would do as protectors do. If there were anything that was attacking the town, he would help. Unfortunately, there was a tribe of druids not far out from Bemere Lake who were at odds with Bemere Lake, and they decided to attack using elementals to destroy quite a lot of the town. A lot of the druids from Bemere Lake did lose their lives that day, but Chip was extremely brave and managed to fight off the leader of the tribe of druids who was controlling these elementals and was able to chase them from town. And for that, he was then voted to be one of the champions. Our last continuing member was a character called Atlas. He was a pitch black tabaxi bard, and he was a pirate. He was actually from a different country called Eneos, which was one of the more humid countries, which also has many jungles. And his involvement to become a champion was a little bit odd. When he was younger, he had to leave Eneos, and he ended up living in a mountainous village called Mount Tefel, which was in a forest. And it was a very poor town. There was not a lot in this town, and there was not a lot going for the town considering where it was. So it was very difficult for anyone in that town to really get out of it, to do anything that felt meaningful. And he really grew to love this town, so he wanted to try and help and do something that would help make this town flourish. So he did what he does best, and he went adventuring. Him and his closest friend from the town, Leorin, they took to the seas to try and find this rumoured relic that was very desirable to a lot of people. The value of this relic was far beyond anything that Atlas had even ever heard of. And the money that this would have brought in to Mount Tefel would have completely taken it from a quiet, sleepy, struggling village into a profitable town that it could have been. So him and Leorin went to go and find this, and they found it. They sold it and brought the money back. However, Leorin didn't want to be involved at all with this. He wanted absolutely no credit, and then he disappeared. Atlas, however, was regarded as a hero because the money that he brought in did completely save the town. And nowadays, it is a very flourishing city with fantastic links to Vagon. And so Atlas was chosen to be a champion, which again he did accept. So this is how all the characters came to be together in Nearport. There was supposed to be another character who was going to be a human monk, and we had worked on a whole backstory for him. He was living in the country of Kigiria. This is a very, very mountainous country, and it is actually run by the monks. He grew up in Farfoss, which is in Eforas. Where Farfoss was, it was a very good link between Eforas and Kigiria, and he spent a lot of time going between Eforas and Kigiria, learning to live alongside the monks. And as time went on, he grew extremely curious on how they lived, and decided to join them at the monasteries up in the mountains in Kigiria. And the head monk that was there, we didn't really come up with a name for him, but I eventually did design a character around him, who you can actually find on my YouTube channel. I named him Rai in this video because I didn't really have another name for him at the time, so I just dubbed him as Rai. I was worried that my players would actually find links to this character, so I didn't put a lot of his background onto the YouTube channel because he was going to be a little bit more of a character in the campaign. Some things have happened along the way though, and we're not playing that campaign anymore, so I feel a little bit better about talking a little bit more about him. So Rai, which we will call him now, began training this young character and took him on very important quests. We actually hadn't quite narrowed down the reason for him becoming a champion, but there was going to be some kind of mission that he went on with Rai, and eventually this would lead to him being chosen as a champion. But again, he ended up not actually playing, so it was very sad. We were really quite excited for him playing. However, I had written an entire character quest for this character, and it was all to do with the monks, and it was going to fit in with the main overarching storyline. So having that pre-made background anyway was really quite helpful for just slotting that into where the rest of the story was going. So they all met in the airport, and that is where their story began. Now the story itself, obviously every campaign starts off with your very small quests where the characters get to know each other, they get to know how each of them play, how they work together and everything like that. So they very much did that. They had their small quests where there was a murder that happened in town. They were trying to figure out what was going on, and it led them to all over the town trying to learn the mechanics of how my world actually worked as well, how the money worked and how the transactions worked and how the missions were chosen, how they should speak with the high priest, how they should speak with the advisors, and how they should deal with the other champions in the area. And it went so well. They also met another character, V is his name. That is the only thing that he has is V, which is quite funny because at the time when I was doing this, I remember it has a different name, which I will obviously not say just in case one of them tune in, because I do plan on getting back to this world at some point with these characters, so I don't really want to spoil the big things. But when I was obviously watching Critical Role at the same time, and I designed this rogue character, and I gave him this name that began with a V, and yeah, he was just known as V to these characters. And then I was re-watching Critical Role like a couple of years later, and then I found out that Vax, like Vax'ildan, he had actually called himself V at some point, and I was like, I wonder if I've for this one, subconsciously did this. However, I would say there are Critical Role characters scattered around my world. So they met V anyway and one of his companions, and there was a lot of intrigue that was going on. There was a couple of story leads that they didn't grasp onto, because I would say this was one of my first times DMing. I had done 2 one-shots before this just for these players to, figure out a little bit of the world and for me to test if I could DM, because that was something else. I hadn't done that yet, so I didn't know if I was actually going to be able to DM or be good enough to be able to do it. So it was this was the first time of delving into my story, so I was nervous. I know the players were a little bit anxious as well. They were excited, but they were also not sure how to work the world and things, so it was a weird experience, but it was very good. But in that first few sessions that we did, we really worked our way around how the players were going to work, how I was going to DM, and we were then able to work out, I was able to work out how to involve them in the world without them wandering the wrong way all the time, which happened often. So something else that happened, and this is another character that joined them along the way, and that is Big D. So if you have ever looked in the monster manual, you might have seen this guy. This guy is Monodrone. He is a monster in the world. He met them when they were wandering from the starting city to St. Aria, which is where they were going to get shipped to go on their next mission. And they knew someone was following them, but they didn't know who. And it turns out that it was Monodrone. He was just kind of floating around somewhere. In this world, I had the Monodrones as part plant and part clockwork, and in the next town that they were actually going to pass through, and this was literally a town they were passing through for one night and then on their way, they came across Big D and where he lived, and he lived in this big clock tower with this person called Gil, and Gil was an inventor, he was a creator, he was a tinkerer, and eventually he actually realised that Big D wanted to go along with the party, and Big D went along with them. It wasn't meant to, he was literally meant to be just a fun little character on the side, but they decided that they wanted to take him with them, which D&D, but anyway, Gil called him Joni, because Monodrone, he called him Joni, and they just went ahead with Big D, and it was just Big D for the whole time. Unfortunately, I had to play him. It was an NPC. So whenever I was figuring out how to like do battles and things, I also had to incorporate the fact that I also had to do Big D. Never thought I'd ever say that on camera. I also had to play Big D, and that doesn't sound any better. And also the monsters, but also try not to kill Big D as well. But have it that if they wanted to make sure that Big D did not get into trouble, they would have to deal with that themselves. So it was very difficult. But I would say Big D was a great character. It was fun, it was a plan, and eventually they found out that you could, like, well, the druid was able to cast Speak with Glance and actually talk to him. So it was very cute, but he also came with them, and unfortunately where they were going on their ship was actually to the worst place in the whole world, which is called Dromer. Now, Dromer is a country that is basically unruled. It is a country where all of the unwanted species in the world live, and that is species like the more wise goblins and the lizard folk, and all those types of species that are looked down upon in a world all end up living there. Now, what I would also say is most tieflings are not looked down upon. We have tieflings of all varying colours living in this world, and most of them are fine. However, if you are a tiefling and you have the skin tone of a human, you are not going to have a good time. In this world, due to wars that have happened in the past, tieflings are very, very, very looked down upon if you have the skin tone of a human, because you can blend in too well, and that is how this war started in the first place, this previous war. So any tieflings that have that skin tone also live there, or they live in hiding, always wearing hats, never like having their tails out, wearing contacts to make them look a little bit more human, casting spells to make their eyes look more human, all that kind of thing. There is quite a lot of them who live in Dromer, and unfortunately in Dromer there is a war going on, and this war was the reason that they were going to Dromer. There was a champion who unfortunately had went missing, and their job was to find the champion and bring them back, and along the way they met quite a few fun characters. One of these characters was someone called Nez, who was completely ripped off from Not or Veth, who was played by Sam Riegel in The Mighty Nine. They did eventually complete this quest and move on to the next quest, which was a character background. The whole point of me talking about this is I have severely missed playing Dungeons and Dragons, and I have been kind of working on things in the background to try and bring my love for D&D into the content that I create. I love drawing characters. I've drawn Ruby, who was a tiefling that was living in Dromer. I've drawn Rai as well. I've also drawn a character called Yuvari, who was going to be a more prominent character later on, but we never actually got around to meeting her, but Yuvari was someone that I was going to introduce into them. And I want to draw more of my characters, and I want to draw just more characters in general. I want to dive more into different worlds. I want to create more maps. I loved playing D&D. The experience that I got from it, it really did bring me out my shell. For being able to actually DM to people, to tell a story that I've written to people was terrifying at first, but it's been very, very helpful for sitting down and actually and streaming. It's been very helpful for that. It really did help my confidence. It really helped my imagination as well. I never thought that I would ever be able to write and tell a story. Storytelling was always my sister's thing. She used to tell stories all the time when I was a kid. She was only a couple years older, but I would always ask her to tell me stories, and she was always the storyteller. So for me, I never ever thought that I would ever sit down and write a story, but I did. I mean, I'm not very good with the words. I have tried to make things sound good, and I would love to make this in, I've always wanted to make this into some kind of comic or some kind of book or something, because I really enjoyed the story that I wrote. I'd have to change around some things, because I have used some lore I've used some of the official D&D lore for some of the gods, and mixed it in with my own lore, so I don't know if I'd actually be allowed to do that, and publish a comic with those gods and things. I don't know if I'd be allowed to do that, but it was very interesting, and it was a really, really good experience, and I would love to play more D&D. Having time to do it is the problem, because unfortunately these days, more than any, I'm very, very busy. So unfortunately I don't really have the time to do a lot of stuff. But I really wanted to just talk more about D&D. I've spoke about D&D here and there on my channel. I've spoken about it a little bit on streams. I did a few drawings and things. I've posted to my Patreon about it, but I've never sat down and actually just made a video about it. So that's what I wanted to do. And I really just wanted to share my excitement for D&D more than anything else, because I still love it. Even though I don't play it, I still love it. I still see myself as a DM as well. And one-shots, honestly, I would love to do one-shots. I have 5 one-shots just sitting there ready to go. And they're all based around my world. They're all based around the characters in the world. They were written for the characters that we played with, but I could definitely rejig it to play with other people. And I also want to start doing more like original characters as well, because I have so many characters in my world that I would have loved to have seen realised. So that's something that I'm thinking about doing, is drawing some more characters from it. Maybe draw Kaylin, because Kaylin was a very interesting character. She had a really, really interesting backstory. Her teacher was a very, very huge part of her story. She was getting visions and stuff, and it was really, really, really cool, and I couldn't wait for it to come to fruition, but unfortunately we stopped playing before it did. But I would really like to draw her. I'm going to draw her. That's what I'm going to do. I'm drawing Kaylin. But yeah, I really just wanted to sit down and just share my love for D&D, because that is one of the main things about my channel, is I just want to share the things that I love with the people that watch the videos, and this is something that I really love, so I really just wanted to share that with you. So I hope you enjoyed listening to me talk. If you want to actually hear more about the story, please let me know below, because I will more than happily talk more about the story, that the story so far. But yeah, if you want to hear more about the stories of it, the more specific details of the story, let me know down below, and if you do, I will make more videos about this. And yeah, I really hope you enjoyed this one. It didn't really have much of a point to this video. Like, I just talked for an hour now. However, I really hope that you did enjoy the video, and if you did, remember to like and subscribe below if you haven't already. And yeah, comment if you want to hear more about the world, if you want to hear more about the characters, if you want to hear more about the story. Please just let me know below, because I am more than happy to talk about it. But remember to subscribe so that you know when my next videos are coming out. I do post every Friday, whether it is just chatting videos like this about D&D or anime, whether it is I do a couple of vlogs here and there as well. I do speedrun videos, I do game videos, so please just come and check out. It's everything that I love goes into this channel. So if you like that kind of thing, come say hi. Subscribe below. I also stream every Wednesday and Saturday on Twitch, and my Wednesday streams are always art streams, and my Saturday streams are my gaming streams, where I play games like Fear and Hunger, Omori, and I'm going to be playing some Phasmophobia soon, so look out for that coming out. I also play games like Pokemon and things as well, so go follow on Twitch if you want to come hang out with my streams and see me live and chat. Something that's coming quite soon is my Discord. I haven't ever had a Discord, and this is really just to kind of test to see if people want to join the Discord. It will be going live within the next month, so please keep an eye out for that. I will post about it to X. I will also mention it on Twitch. I will mention it here. I will post about it everywhere that I post, so please look out for that coming in, and join the Discord, because I'll be quite active in there, and it's always good to hear from my followers and subscribers and stuff. So yeah, come hang out. But whatever it is, whether I see you in the Twitch streams, whether I see you on the YouTube comments, whether I see you at X or Patreon or wherever it is, I really look forward to seeing you there. And yeah, have a good time, and I'll see you next week.